Okay, guys, so we're going to quickly take some C notes over humans and the oceans. So, first, if you talk about ocean, you have to talk about pollution. So, what is pollution? Is any harm to a physical, chemical, or biological health of the ocean's ecosystem? That is what ocean pollution is. So, ocean pollution kind of has its own unique definition. So, it's any harm that could be physically, chemical, or biological. What are the two largest sources of ocean pollution? Well, there is point source, which is what we kind of talked about last year, where you can directly trace where it comes from, which is dumping waste directly into the ocean. And it can be traced back to drainage pipes or oil leaks or oil companies, things like that. However, most pollution is non-point source, which is where it comes from runoff from farms, ranges, septic tanks, cars, trucks, and you can't locate the exact source. So go ahead and write these down. What are the two ways that solid waste can affect marine life? Well, many birds, fish, and other animals can become entangled in the plastic or even mistake them as food. If you'll notice in this picture of a bird that died, when they actually cut it open, there's like lighters and all kinds of trash inside them that they actually thought was food and mistakenly ate it and then later died. Or like this seal that's caught up in all the floating trash and plastic. Toxic waste can also harm animals because it can be passed through very quickly in the food chain and even end up in our food. And plastic is broken down into tiny pieces that can get caught in our ocean currents and be traveled all around the world. So how can excess sediments in the oceans affect the marine life? Well, some of you got the article where you talked about the dead zone. Excess sediments can clog up filter structures and even marine filter feeders like clams and sponges. Excess sediments can also block sunlight from reaching normal depths, and if sunlight can't penetrate, then you can't have photosynthesis, which will help kill the producers, which can affect the entire ecosystem. So let's talk about algae bloom, which has a great deal to do with fertilizer runoff. This is kind of what I was talking about in class. If you've ever seen that pond that's just covered in that green, that is called an algae bloom, and it is a rapid increase of algae in an aquatic ecosystem. Now, this normally happens because of excess fertilizer runoff from farms into the oceans. This increase of fertilizer allows the algae to bloom out of control. The algae then uses all the oxygen in the water, and then they decompose, and they use very little for the other organisms, causing the other organisms to suffocate. So the main reason why algae bloom is bad, make sure you have this one underlined. All the underline is the important. And again, it can also block photosynthesis to the other aquatic plants that are not floating on top. So let's talk about water temperature. How does water temperature affect coral? One major thing that affects coral life is climate change. Ocean currents, ocean temperatures have risen and are continuing to rise. Corals can survive in a very small temperature range, and when the polyps get too stressed out and the water gets too high, they actually die and lose the algae that's living in them, and they turn completely white. This is known as coral bleaching. So if you see coral bleaching, like this bottom picture below, it's because all the organisms that live in coral have died because the water has gotten too hot. So another problem is that the oceans can become acidic. High levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. The CO2 comes in, forms a population in the air, mixes with the water, creating harmful carbic acid. So just like the air can be acidic, the oceans can too. So what are some examples of why humans are important, and not why humans are important, but why humans rely on the oceans and why it is so important? They are a main food source. We get many raw materials from them. Recreation and transportation, minerals such as salt, quartz, sand, copper, iron are all mined from the ocean. We get a lot of oil, as you know, living near the Gulf. Tidals and waves can provide energy. And we also get a lot of other wind energy from the coastlines of wind turbines. So these are all why humans rely. And I'm only wanting you to copy 3 down. So pick which 3, but make sure you do know a couple more for the test. How have humans changed or modified the ocean systems? Well, runoff from farms, like we said, and runoff from cities can carry pollution, can carry fertilizers, which are going to affect the ocean's ecosystem. How can humans help save the ocean? Here's the big one. If we're only eating fish that are being over-harvested, we could stop that by eating maybe some farm-raised fish, like one of y'all suggested in class, or trying to put a limit on the number of fish that they could catch. Reduce the use of chemicals and properly dispose of oil. I mean, how many of your parents sit there and change the oil at the house and then just let it run down the drain? Governments can pass laws to reduce overfishing and ocean pollution, and communities can help to build artificial reefs like this one here. But I mean, have you ever been to the beach and not seen a piece of trash? It's physically impossible. I mean, I will spend all my time picking up people's trash and plastic and anything I find in the ocean because you don't want sea life to choke on it. An artificial reef is a human man-made structure that provides a place for a reef to build, for the coral and sponges to develop, and eventually the other organisms. So these are all ways that we can help our oceans. Okay, so I hope I made that fast enough for you. So if you need to rewind it, go back. But make sure you do have good notes because, like I said, there are questions on the test that are over this.